everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Rick Bistline. Rick works with Nightlife Security Consultants and is a consultant specializing in the hospitality, nightlife, and entertainment industries, helping venues, promoters, and security teams optimize safety, operations, and public safety. Rick has shifted his focus to consulting, training, and risk management for the nightlife space, drawing on his deep expertise in security, leadership, and behavioral insight. He's also pursuing further education to enhance his capacity to support folks in mental health and wellness in high pressure environments. Since his episode in 2023, Rick has leaned fully into consulting, combining his policing past, his role as an educator, and his passion for safer, smarter nightlife ecosystems. Today, we'll explore how how he's doing business has evolved, how he's integrating mental health and wellness into the nightlife space, and what it really means to lead in high stakes environments. You can find Rick on LinkedIn by searching Richard Bistline, PhD, or going to his website, nightlifesecurity.com, or by emailing him at rick.bistline@nightlifesecurity.com, or listening to his podcast that he co-hosts, Nightlife Security Podcast. Hello, Rick. It's fantastic having you on the show.
Hi, Olivia. Well, thank you for having me back.
I'm excited, and I'm excited that you are back because we always have such an interesting, in-depth conversation every single time we talk. So welcome back, and let's begin today with one of the staple questions. What does success mean and look like to you now, and how has that shifted since we talked in 2023?
Well, I think for me, success has always been for me how can I help somebody on a daily basis? If I help at least one person, I find that success to me. But I think it's evolved past that a little bit more. I still try to achieve that, but it's how I can be most helpful to whomever I am, involved with that day. It could be you, it could be my wife, it could be my business partners, it could be anybody. But I'm at the stage of my career in my life where it's shifted from trying to do more and more and more versus being very methodical with how I run my life, my business, and what I try to achieve. And that's to give back. I want to help public safety personnel on all stages, whether it be law enforcement, firemen, and specifically nightlife security teams and operators to help them do their job safer and smarter, and just bringing all my experience back and giving it back to them. That's all I care about at this point in my career.
And one thing you mentioned there as well is being really methodical with how you spend your time and how you show up. And I think one thing that I have learned on my journey of entrepreneurship, consulting, and just life is taking stock in how you show up and what rooms you're showing up in, when that is, how that is so key. And when you really get methodical with it, instead of just, as you kind of mentioned earlier, like grinding it out and just being like, okay, I got to push through, and having the stressors in your back of your mind, not only do you show up better, but you tend to enjoy life better as well.
So true. And that's the thing is I was just in Florida doing a couple trainings this past week. And I tell it, no matter how big the room is, sometimes I get 4 or 5 security guys to get a room of 30 people in the room. Listen, I'm not here for any other reason to support and help you. I'm retired already. I've already worked like 4 different jobs, and it's not about me anymore. It's about you. And I don't like to say it because I don't want people to think, well, you're just, grandiosing about it. It's not the case. I genuinely mean it. And I feel like that they actually feel that way. And that's all I care about is I want to be able to do the grind, as you said, and push out these things and push out content that's helpful to other people, because it's not about me, and it's never really been about me, but even more so now than ever.
And I think it's also, and one thing I have talked about as well is like how you show up in the environments, which you just touched upon too, is are you showing up from a place of trying to help, or are you showing up from a mindset of like, okay, I gotta get this money, like how are you really showing up? Because a lot of times, and I'd love your insight on this and your journey overall, but also since we talked in 2023, is when you show up from that place of, I'm going to be here to help you, whether you walk away with one thing, whether you walk away and go, okay, I need to talk to that person more. I need, if you go to, I'm going to use the conference you brought up, you speak to a bunch of people, some of them might come back to you and say, hey, can I bring you on to consult for this? Or, come talk to our team, the full team, whatever it might be. But when you lead from a place of, I want you to be impacted, more business come and positivity flows your way. And I know, I remember when I first started like my business, a lot of people would reach out and be like, let's work together on mindset and like mindset. And I was like, I need to get my processes aligned. I need to like make sure XYZ is happening. And as the business grew and I started feeling the stressors and all this, I was like, I need to take stock in time and how I'm showing up and all these things that we just mentioned, but also I kind of needed to do a mindset shift. And I started doing more recently, I was doing this challenge through a money mantra book. And it's daily journaling for 30 days that by the time this episode completed, I would be done. And and then at the end, you're writing mantras and you're repeating it on paper. And at first, I laughed when it said like write this till the end of the sheet, because I was like, what, are we in like fifth grade and I'm being punished to like just keep writing the same thing? And but it's like, okay, journal and answer these questions, then use a handful of affirmations to pick which one sets with you and say it. And I will tell you, it works. And I was like, oh, this is what people are talking about. This is the mindset shift. This is what is showing up, not from necessarily a different place, but mindfulness from a different place.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And there's so many different ways to address that mindfulness piece, the mindset. And I focused a lot of that in the last several years of my career, especially when it comes to leadership development, and then obviously did human development, human performance improvement along the lines of public safety. Everybody's obviously a little bit different. We bring, and there's all kinds of different things you can do, right? But at the end of the day, if it's about how you show up, but it's we have to remember two things, and this goes to my stoicism, right? I love the practice of stoicism, and then it's really about, I control what I can control and my response to other people. And part of that for me is, how can I be helpful? If I come at a situation, a project, a group of people that I'm training, how can I be helpful to you? Because a lot of the material and content that we train on specifically around the public safety practices in nightlife security and the risk mitigation and loss control is, we want to try to help them keep from getting sued, getting arrested, those types of things. But at the end of the day, if something we talk about, the group talks about, well, this all well and good, but this happens all the time. How do we deal with that? We have to shift. It's about them. It's not about me. It's about what I can help you with. And doing that coaching, and whenever those moments of coaching show up, I love those. Those are like, oh, tell me more about that. And getting curious about people, getting curious about when, what they need and how they need it. Again, it comes back to like, for you, this has been successful. For me, I find different ways to be successful in that. Like for now, I've tried to change my routine again to go back to, getting up, doing a workout, getting a workout in. So if you, I just listened to another podcast the other day, the Huberman Lab, and I love Andrew Huberman. He's amazing, but he was talking about, the morning routine and how that sets you up for success for the rest of the day. So all these concepts, and there's so much out there, and there's so much information out there that for us to filter through. It's just whatever works for you, I think, is what
Oh,
it
yeah.
comes down to.
And I think it's also what works for you in the place you are now,
Yes,
right? Because if
context.
you told me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, because now we're at this point when this episode drops, 4 years into the business and the podcast, um, to do like read this I Am Money Magnet book and do the journaling every day and the 30-day journaling and what she calls affirmantras. I'd be like, you're out of your mind. I am not doing this. This is not going to work. Why am I going to spend the like 30 to 45 minutes every day doing this and starting off my day like this? Now my days more recently, and once I get through the 30 days, like I've also put it into my phone, so like I could spend 10 minutes going through all my opera mantras, and like that will be my plan once the day's up. Is I wake up, I do the money opera mantras, I then do what's called a brain dump for 2 minutes. And a good friend of mine like introduced me to this theory as we all have so many things going through our mind at all time. Um, and my boyfriend laughed when I told him, like, I'm going to do this brain dump in the morning every day for 2 minutes because I know you don't like at the end of the day when I literally brain dump onto you every single thought I've had all day. And he goes, it's not that I don't like it, it's that sometimes I had a long day. But like start your day and clear your mind that way. And then I go into a 15 to 30-minute workout. And that has become more recently, since like September of 2025, like my go-to routine. That is
Mm.
now built into my workday. The first hour of my day are those tasks. Then I spend the other 4 to 5 hours of the day doing recordings, doing consulting calls, doing everything else. But to your point, what I noticed is like mentally showing up and like doing your workout and starting your day like that instead of being like, oh my God, I gotta get this workout in or I gotta get this in, really makes you clear, energized, and like ready to go.
Very true. And it's funny you say brain dump. I've got these post-it notes all over my desk, and I just whenever I have something, I got to write it down. But I got to find a more efficient way to do it. So I like your idea. I appreciate that thought. I'm gonna have to try that. I've been trying to journal more too. Like you were talking about it, and I wish that I would be able to spend a little more time doing it because it helps. It's so helpful. Just taking everything out and just putting it out on somewhere so you have it, and then you filter based on the context and what you got going during the day is how you can set yourself up for success because that's what it comes down to. I can't be helpful to other people if I'm mired by my own stuff, right? If I got all this crap in my mind and I'm like, do I deal with it? Oh, I just don't feel like doing that. I'll do that later, and it goes away.
Yeah. Well, that being said, and talking about shifts, from the last time we spoke, you transitioned from public safety and more organizational roles like being a professor and different things you were doing. Because as you mentioned earlier, you do try to help as many people as possible. And I've seen that since the first day we met, and continue to have spoken through time into really focusing in consulting in nightlife and safety operations. What was there an internal or external factors that pushed you to shift towards this area, and how did you decide this was your next frontier?
That's a great question. The shift was something that uh, my business partners that I work with, we've been talking about it for years. I've been doing contracting with Nightlife Security Consultants since 2005 when I met Robert, the CEO of the company. He founded it in '98. He was a San Diego police officer and had to arrest a bouncer and realized there's no training or standard around the development of these folks. They don't get anything, right? It's back in the time of the '80s and '90s when it was throw a security shirt on somebody and go work the front door. And that's how it is in most places still. So we're trying to shift that, and part of the vision of the company and the way that I have aligned with that mission is we want to with the everybody says people are drinking less, going out less, but I don't necessarily see that from the venues I go to. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about is not just for law enforcement, but law enforcement has a lot of resources and tools they have to be able to develop their people and stuff. Not to my liking. There's a lot of things that are missing, but in this space, there's an opportunity to help them mitigate risk and save so much money in liability, not just for better training and better processes. It is a mindset shift. A lot of it, it's changing culture of the way we always think about security is, this is anywhere, right? Security. We think about security teams or security people that do that job. They're always, we always think about them as, they don't make us any money. And in this industry specifically, we don't make any money. But if we think about the strategy we build and we hire the right people to do that job and do it right and do it safely, we can save so much money on the back end that we can continue to make money. And that's what a lot of these owners and operators, that's what they think of. They're thinking about the bottom line, which is great. But my shift in moving to here was, we just have a lot of opportunity. We left a lot of business on the table over the last several years that we could have really expanded because, we have a great methodology that we use. We're very client focused, but the big thing for us is we bridge that hospitality and security element. When I teach these guys and gals that I show up for when I do my different trainings across the country is, your job is 80% hospitality, 20% security. It's not about being that big bulking guy at the front door anymore. It's, women in this job are fantastic because they handle situations so much differently than guys do. And we encourage that. We offer ideas about better hiring practices, better processes, and those types of things. And I love it. It's so invigorating to see a shift when they actually do it. And for me, it allows me an opportunity to take all the experience that I have as a cop, educator, human performance development, and bring it to an industry that just lacks that development opportunity. And one of the other interesting things is across the country, they're starting to regulate training and hiring and processes and practices in this industry. More specifically, there's most states have a training or hiring requirement for general security guards, but for proprietary security, people that are hired by individual venues, there hasn't been. California was the first to actually create it. Actually partnered with us and my business partner, our CEO. He actually helped California create their mandate and the training process. So all of that to say is, it just, there's so much about this industry that I love. I don't necessarily love being up till 3 o'clock in the morning some nights when I'm working with clients because it's not my thing anymore. But I love working with these guys and they're so appreciative of it. I think that's the big thing for me is to see the light bulb go off and for them to just be so appreciative that somebody's taking the time to work with them.
And what you said earlier also like had a light bulb go off for me is like the regulation and really what the training is. Because I remember we were in Juneau and there's a local bar here. There obviously more than one in Juneau, but there's this one bar and I liked their buffalo chicken or the ranch Caesar wrap. I forget exactly what wrap it is because it's been a hot minute. Because we had gone a handful of times, gone in, got food, and like enjoyed it. It was quick. We never went at night because we're not like massive drinkers or whatever. And there was a night that there were a few Coast Guard members who went to the bar to get food. They worked all day. They were here working on one of the boats. And they were like, oh, easy. We could have a drink. We can do something because we have tomorrow off. And all of a sudden, my boyfriend's phone starts going off. Like, you're not going to believe what's happening. Like, oh my God, like someone just almost got killed. And we're like, wait, what? Like, what is going on? So that apparently one of the guys at the bar was plastered. The individual tried to stop serving them. And he didn't really like it. She escalated the situation very quickly and had the bouncer step in. The bouncer, not to any fault, I think it was a level of, like you said, lack of training that is there. got aggressive, grabbed the guy, threw him to the ground, like threw him outside and threw him to the ground. Well, when he hit the ground, he hit his head on the cement pavement. Then he got up because he's all discombobulated and is like again, as the Coast Guard members who were watching this unfold said, it was definitely like he was severely injured and not knowing up from down and walked towards the guy, and the bouncer did not know how to read that and went and pushed him again fell to the ground. And at this point, like now the guy's out, like he was out for a minute, and the Coast Guard members like immediately call an ambulance because they're like looking at this and they're like, this guy's gonna die. Like this is, the bouncer didn't mean to do it because he just thought, okay, get this guy out of the bar, but size proportion and like drunkenness, this is what the outcome's going to be. And so the guy got to the hospital. I think he did end up passing away. I don't know what the final outcome is. He was like barely alive when he got to the ER, but they ended up doing an investigation on that bar and on the bouncer of like, okay, what was the force used? Why wasn't this de-escalated? How could you have gotten him out of the bar without necessarily throwing him out of the bar to a point where this is happening? And in that moment, like when we heard this whole story, you know, that night and the next day as it like was being told, my boyfriend looked at me, he goes, yeah, we're not going back there at night if this is what, because during the day, you know, it's just a restaurant, more or less, like with a bar, like a sports bar vibe, not a lot of people in it. He's like, maybe we'll go back during the day, but like safety wise, we're not dealing with that and having that risk. And so I think that's a perfect example too, is that it might have not been the mindset the bouncer was in. The bouncer could have very easily been like, this is my job, this is what I have to do, but there was no training, like you said, to really lean into and have the knowledge to be able to go, okay, this is how I have to handle this situation. And, you know, as a former police officer yourself, you know how to de escalate situations, you know how to read situations. But a lot of times when people bring in security, they don't get that same training. So I love what you're doing.
And sadly, that happens way more than you think it does across the country. I work as an expert witness and get hired by attorneys on both sides. Unfortunately, it's more on the plaintiff side who file lawsuits against bars. And I have multiple cases right now where they all ended up tragically as almost exactly the way you described it. And there's two things at play. There, number one is lack of training, lack of management oversight. There's a couple other things involved in that, but the biggest thing, the biggest struggle that we all have, and this goes to cops too, and how they use force, is ego. Your ego gets in the way. You feel like you've been disrespected, or this person's disrespected the bar, and you don't know how to mitigate and manage that response. And that goes to your de-escalation point. There's de-escalation, tactics and ways to handle situations to address people's behavior, but it's got to come from a mindset. It's got to be driven by mindset. You can't change behavior without addressing mindset. So the mindset comes first, scripting out what it is, how you would handle a situation. Let's say you have to throw somebody out, or let's say you have to, stop a fight. You've got to have the tools, the capabilities, and not just the skill sets, but the mindset to be able to say, hey, let me take a step back. I don't need to rush into this. Let me take the time to handle it properly. Sometimes you got to jump in, and that's fine. But if you plan ahead and you have the proper training and you develop through scenarios and those types of things, it back to, like you said, cops, we train a lot scenario based, and while there always is room for improvement and obviously room for a lot more, these guys don't get anything generally, and it shows, unfortunately, in a tragic case like that.
And one thing you just mentioned there as well is the mental health, the mindset of things. And one of the things that you also focus on when you're doing your consulting is that mental health, is the wellness. And especially performing and being in that state in high pressure environments. How do you see mental health intersecting with nightlife operations, security teams, etc., hospitality overall? What are those hidden stressors people aren't talking about?
I mean, well, mental health in general, as you know, is a struggle across the country for everybody. But for these folks that work this position, number one, they're dealing with situations where they don't have adequate training and capabilities to handle those situations. And most of them are working this as a side job. They have regular jobs during the day. They're trying to make a little extra money. They have other things going on, other challenges, other things at home. They may come into work in a bad state, or they just may love coming in and doing the job, which is great. But we all suffer from, you know, our own our own challenges, our own problems, our own issues. And when you bring them to work, it doesn't matter where you work, but in this environment, if you bring that into work and you're already challenged and you're, dealing with a situation, you're going to take more aggressive action in some cases, or you may do nothing because you're like, I don't care about this, go away or whatever the case may be. And you get sued for actions and inactions. That's, civil litigation 101. If you are doing something and going above and beyond what you're supposed to do, or you just don't do anything, I mean, and somebody gets hurt by it, that's the issue. But, mental health, and I think a lot of this comes down to just humanizing people, just getting to know and talking to, and that's why I love when I go on site with these guys and gals and I talk to them, and I try to, in some cases I go and work alongside them to help coach them through things. So when I see the interaction, I see them and I look and see something's not right here. Let's pull them aside, just chat with them, and those types of things. So they're no different than anybody else. We all have the same challenges and issues, but in this case, and you mentioned high pressure. And there was a study done several years ago by a professor in Canada. He went and worked alongside nightlife security teams in Toronto for over a summer. And one of the outcomes that he found for that particular group is they saw more violence in the nightlife security. Bouncers found in nightlife security scenarios and situations. They still saw more violence in a night than most cops see in a week. Now, whether that's candidate or not, regardless, I think that most bouncers that I bring that up to across the country can relate to that. They're like, yeah, we're putting hands on somebody probably 4 or 5 times a night. We're arguing with people 4 or 5 times a night, cutting people off 10 times a night. So they're constantly under stress. And think about, you and I have talked about this before, but cops and all the stress that they deal with. And then I found over the last couple of years, the leadership space in law enforcement and public safety, they're having to deal with all the stuff going on, but their mental health is struggling because they are having to deal with all the other stuff going on and answer to, what their particular role is. And it's just a, cascading waterfall of problems and pressure and all these things. But these guys that I work with, that they laugh it up and have a good time, but you can tell when I start talking about mental health and mental well-being, is it hits home with them.
Mhm. And that even made me think, as you were saying, like two different stories, incidents that I've experienced. There was a bar in New Jersey that when I lived there for many years, I would go to all the time. Like it's a sports bar. And I, being the friendly person, got to know the bouncers because there's like the same three bouncers working every single day. And this restaurant is open 7 days a week. So there's always at least two on. Weekends, there's all three of them. And they are working 7 days a week. And I remember it like got to a point, if I'd show up before my friends, or depending on where I am or conversations I'm having, sometimes like drunk men would come over and try to talk or like this and that. And like because I was friends with bouncers, I kind of knew when they would walk their circle, or like they'd come over throughout the night and joke with me and like whatever. And like it got to a point where like if I knew, like I'd seen someone at the bar before and like knew they were probably gonna get sloppy in an hour and like try to do some like talk to me or talk to someone else who probably is not gonna want them to talk to them, I like be like, hey, to one of the bouncers and like be like, hey, in like an hour, come over. Like make sure you stop by. and like see this environment, or like I could give them a look and they'd like walk over and be like, "Hey Olivia, can you come over here with me for a second?" And it was like them being able to read the body language that individuals were going through, to be like, this is when I kind of step in or step away, um and this and that, and understand those moments. And then the second part of what you were saying is, yeah, I was recently having a conversation with a upper management in the Marines. Like, it's someone higher up in the Marines. I'm not going to give his rank or anything. And he was going through some issues, and we were just talking, and he's like, I have these individuals below me going through this. Like, one person's going through this, one's going through like depression, one's going like some weird stuff was happening. And he's like, okay, now I have to work on that and make sure they're okay and pick up work that they're might not be able to do because they might be on restricted duty now. But also, like, now I'm stressed about them. I still got to go home and do my thing. I still got to do my whole job. So, a lot of times, and why I'm saying that is, a lot of times, like you mentioned, people understand overall the impact, the high pressure that could go into a job, but don't always highlight that. Yeah, you look at the chiefs, you look at the commanders, you look at individuals and go, oh, wow, they made it up. Like, they don't have to worry as much about this. But what happened? They do have to step in a lot of times. They are the ones who are doing frontline work and then all the other stuff. The workload doesn't get easier, it just gets harder. And you need to be able to be in that mental space consistently.
Absolutely. And I've over the last several years, I've had the fortune of do some one-on-one coaching with, high level police leaders, executive teams and stuff. And that's where I kind of discovered my real passion for, mental health and well-being, and we've talked about before, but, my own story. But beyond that, I've always been trying to find how we can better develop our leaders. And one of them really just keeps coming back to this idea is their mental health is stressed just as much as anybody else's, but they've got that double duty, right? They've got, not only do they have to worry about people, their own mental health, their own well-being, and how they show up for work every day. Like you said, going back to showing up every day and trying to be helpful to other people and do your job, especially at the command level. But now you're not worried about yourself, but you got to worry about everybody that in the agency, or everybody that reports to you, and the struggles that you see out there. And it's taxing, especially if they aren't regularly getting therapy and those types of things. And as cops, it was always, for me, for a long time, it was I don't want to talk to somebody because nobody can understand what I'm going through. And as you grow up in the ranks, that isolation is another thing with leaders. So you're isolated. You can be the most caring and competent leader in the world, but you're isolated and up at the top, and it's lonely. And not only lonely, but you've got so many things to worry about. It's just a different aspect that I really took notice of in the last several years, and it's no different in any environment, any leadership environment. It's the same thing. Whether you're a a business owner for a bar or nightclub, whether it be small or large, you're still isolated. You still have to worry about those things and worry about the people that you bring in. It's no different than the law enforcement or any other field.
And that being said, as your consulting practice continues to grow, and you giving talks and you doing different aspects of showing up to help the security, the nightlife, hospitality industry as a whole, how do you preserve the depth, quality, and relational connection that we have brought up today in your work? And what guardrails or framework do you use to scale the amount of people you can impact without diluting your value or value in general?
Um, well, it's not easy because venues. It's like policing. Policing is the same everywhere you go, but they have different challenges in their community. They have different laws they have to abide by. the same as in this industry. The industry as a whole operates the same way, but they have regulations that are different for state, jurisdiction, jurisdiction. They have different challenges, economic or whatever. And I struggle to answer this just because I try to bring the idea of, I've tried to adapt it a little bit in some of the content creation that we're doing, where it's more about some of the psychological underpinnings and of how we can relate to other people through, and a lot of this element is based in de-escalation training. And we bring some of those foundational elements to these teams, which allows them to see how they can connect at a human level. And like you said earlier, one of the things is, like, for your experience in that bar in New Jersey, one of the things we teach is being proactive and getting to know the guests. Remember what I said at the very beginning, 80% hospitality, 20% security. If you create an experience for a guest from the front door, and I always say this, I've said this in court and testimony and expert witness, conflict resolution starts at the front door, because you make those connections with people and you build relationships with people right at the get-go, versus those venues or those bars you've been to where the bouncer's checking your ID. All right, going in, and they could care less about you, and you can feel that, versus the guys that are talking to you, getting to know you. That's being proactive. That's creating a healthy culture, an environment where they are interested in their guests. They're interested in people having a good time. And when we focus on that, we build those guardrails around that, and all the training that we do for any bar, nightclub, event venue across the country is, hey, listen, we're all human beings. We're all connected at this level, and this is where we need to be. We're here with them. We're not up here. We're not above anybody else. We're here. And when they start to buy in on that, that's when things start to change. I've seen teams. I've worked with this one team in Florida that I was just visiting with on Sunday. They've had a dramatic turnaround. I think a lot of it has to do with the quality of the folks that are on that team, but they bought into the training, like they're hook, line, and sinker. And they actually call me. They actually reach out to me and ask me questions. And every time I go back, they remember everything that I taught them. We really debate like their own specific issues that they're facing, and it just seems to really help them when they remember that we're here with people, we're here to help them, we're here to create a great experience with them, and that shifts everything. And they still have challenges, they still have people that they have to deal with, because people get drunk and cause problems, but they're a little more apt to remember that person's probably drunk for a reason, that they're having some problems or they're having some challenges, and if they can try to help them, that they can.
And I want to ask one last question, because I can't believe our time is coming to an end already. I feel like we
I
could
know,
keep
right?
every time I talk to you in general, whether it's on one of these
Agreed.
episodes or it's just catching up, I feel like the same thing. But I definitely don't want to miss this question, which is for someone running a bar, club, festival, or venue in general who wants to raise the standards around safety, guest experience, staff well-being. What are 2 or 3 changes you challenge them to make this week?
Start thinking about how you can build security as a strategy for your operations. What I mean by that is take a step back and look at what are some of the vulnerabilities that you face, like over the last week, over the last 6 months. What are some of the incidents that have happened inside your venue? And think how you can address those by tweaking, whether it be the number of guards you have, whether it be some basic training you can do with them, or some guidance, or reevaluate your team. Do I have the right people on my team? Are these issues that we had a result of the team that I have, or is it a result of the lack of training, or is it just a lack of the strategy we employ? So the vulnerability, the first thing I say is, what do your front door operations look like? Are you welcoming people in? Are you properly checking IDs? Are you searching patrons? Why or why not? And look at that front door operation, I think, is the first place to consider that security strategy. I think another thing to consider as well is obviously training. You've got to give them some kind of training. And I know that I've heard this over and over again. Well, I've been in the industry 20 years and I tell them what it is I think works best. That's not going to get it done. There are best practices. There are academic papers. There are people like me. There's people like our organization, very few, if far between, that can help support you. We don't need to come out and train you. You can reach out to me and I can say, hey, here's some things you can train on, and pull a YouTube video, and it's helpful. You can listen to our podcast. We'll give you some specific training ideas you can come up with. But I think the third thing, and I think the most important thing for me, is reevaluate your hiring processes. Hire the right team member. What I mean by that is you can know right off the bat if that person has the disposition to be a good security guard. And what are they like? Are they friendly? Are they what's their demeanor? Are they kind? Are they asking the right kind of questions, and just doing a basic background check, a criminal background check, will save you so much heartache down the road. I can't tell you how many cases that I've worked where a guard has been hired without a proper background check, where they have histories of assault, battery, assault with a deadly weapon, all kinds of. There's no room in this industry for people to working in a security position with a criminal record. So I think those three things, but the overarching thing I think is really evaluating your security strategy and where your vulnerabilities you see within the last several months, and just attack one at a time. You don't need to take them all, but figure out one way to address those, and you'll start to see a difference.
Awesome. Well, Rick, how could people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
I think the best way, there's two really good ways. One is on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn. So sending me a message there, taking a look at there, and then probably just an email to my Nightlife Security address. I know you're going to post that in notes, but Rick.Bistline at nightlifesecurity.com. Just feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions or be helpful any way that I can.
Well, thank you, Rick Bistline, for all of your insight today.
Thank you, Olivia.
And a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation is 80% hospitality and 20% security. And I think that's such an important stat to think about in when you're showing up for something, how you're showing up, and the mentality that goes behind that. And I think that's something we talked about throughout today's conversation, is the importance of hospitality in nightlife, in different venues, and it can really make a lot of difference. As well as don't let go in to be honest, I forget what I wrote. Don't let go in the way you think it should be handled. Let go in the way something should be handled. And let mentally also align yourself with different tasks, like we mentioned earlier, doing a morning workout. So mentally you can show up prepared, doing those brain dumps, doing different tasks, as well as conflict resolutions starts at the door. And I love that, because I don't think that just aligns with security or hospitality and nightlife. How are you walking into your house? When you have guests over and you're throwing a party at your house, where's the hospitality starting? You go out to dinner with a group of people, even if it's at a restaurant, right? And there's some individuals who you've never met before. And you're hosting that like night out, let's say you planned it. How's the hospitality starting? Is it starting at the door? And I think it's something that all of us, as entrepreneurs too, right? You own a small business. Is hospitality starting at the door when that new individual walks into your store for the first time? And so I think that's something as well that we should all challenge ourselves to think about and evaluate this week is, are we starting with hospitality at the door? As well as build security as part of your strategy. I love strategy. I love processes and procedures. So Rick really talks up what I love to hear, because I think you flow and perform at your best when you not only follow processes and procedures and have a strategy in place, but you understand what those are. And so I think it's really important to look at your security, whether it's a security team, at a venue, how many people it is, as it is a piece of your strategy. And how does that fit in with everything else when it comes to branding, when it comes to customer service, when it comes to everything? There's all those parts of your strategy you have to allow people to have the best experiences, to grow your business, to grow the types of events you bring in. So it should be just another arm in that strategy, as well as evaluate your hiring process. And I love that this got brought up because I think not enough times we go back and evaluate things. Whether it's a year in, 4 years in, 10 years in, just because it was the way it was done at one point does not mean it's the way it should be done now. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Rick Bistline. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.